You're in a conversation that feels unusually easy, the kind where everything just flows without effort, and at first you don't question it because it feels good, familiar, almost like the other person just gets you. They lean forward slightly, and moments later you notice your posture has shifted too. Their tone softens, and without realizing it, yours follows. The pace of the conversation aligns, your words begin to match their rhythm, even the phrases you use start echoing back from them a few moments later. It feels natural, but it's not random. This is called mirroring, and once you understand it, you start seeing it everywhere. Mirroring is subtle, never immediate, always slightly delayed so it doesn't feel obvious, and that's exactly why it works. Your brain reads similarity as safety, and safety lowers your guard. That's when you start opening up, sharing more than you planned, trusting faster than you normally would. The key is not to resist it, but to recognize it. The moment you notice that alignment, you can quietly tell yourself, this is mirroring, and that awareness alone gives you control. You're no longer just feeling the connection, you're seeing how it's being built. And once you start seeing it, something interesting happens. You begin to notice that conversations aren't just flowing, they're being guided in ways most people never realize. Because sometimes, it's not the comfort that leads you to share more, it's a small statement that pulls the answer out of you without you noticing. Someone says something slightly off, something close but not quite accurate, and your instinct is to correct it. You step in, clarify, add context, and just like that, you've revealed information without ever being asked a direct question. That moment has a name, it's called elicitation. It works because your mind doesn't like leaving things incomplete. When something sounds wrong, you fix it. When something sounds almost right, you refine it. And in doing that, you give away exactly what the other person was looking for, but it never feels like giving information, it feels like continuing a conversation. That's why it's so effective. It bypasses your natural defenses because no question was asked. And once you start noticing this, you'll catch it happening in real time, that slight urge to jump in, to correct, to explain. That's your signal. That's when you pause, just for a second, and remind yourself, this is elicitation. And in that small pause, you regain control over what you choose to share. This is exactly why conversations are more than just words, they're patterns, and once you begin to see those patterns, you stop reacting automatically and start responding with intention. That awareness becomes even more important when someone seems to understand you a little too quickly. They say something that feels personal, something that sounds like they've figured you out, and it lands in a way that makes you nod without thinking. You seem like someone who values loyalty, or you're not the type to give up easily, and immediately your mind starts connecting it to your own experiences. You make it specific, you make it true, and the more you engage, the more accurate it feels. This is called cold reading. It's not about knowing you deeply, it's about giving you just enough to let your own mind do the work. The statements are broad, but your brain fills in the details, creating the illusion of precision. And once you recognize it, you can catch yourself in that moment where it feels personal, and say, this is cold reading. Not to disconnect, but to stay aware. Because awareness keeps you grounded in what's actually happening, instead of what it feels like is happening. And the more you see this, the more you realize that understanding people isn't always about deep insight, sometimes it's about letting them build the meaning themselves. And then there are moments where nothing about the conversation feels off, but your reaction shifts anyway, simply because of how something is presented. You hear the same idea framed in two different ways, and one feels safe while the other feels risky, even though nothing about the reality has changed. That shift is called framing. It's one of the simplest, yet most powerful ways influence works. Your brain responds to how information is delivered before it fully processes what the information actually is. That's why wording matters, tone matters, emphasis matters. And once you start noticing this, you begin to hear things differently. You start to ask yourself, how is this being presented to me, instead of just accepting it at face value? That question alone changes your perspective. It slows everything down just enough for you to see the structure behind the message, not just the message itself. And when you start seeing that structure, you're no longer being pulled in the same way, you're observing it, understanding it, and deciding how you want to respond. As your awareness sharpens, you'll begin to notice how the very first piece of information you hear tends to stay with you longer than anything that follows. A number, a suggestion, an expectation, once it's introduced, it quietly shapes everything that comes after it. This is called anchoring. It doesn't need to be accurate, it just needs to come first. From that point on, your mind adjusts around it, comparing everything else to that initial reference point. And most of the time, you don't even realize it's happening. But once you do, you can catch it. You can pause and ask yourself, why does this feel like the baseline? And in that moment, you begin to separate your thinking from the influence of that first anchor. That's where clarity comes from. Not from rejecting information, but from understanding how it's shaping your perception in the first place. Then there are situations where it feels like you're making a choice, but if you look closely, the outcome has already been narrowed. You're given options, but the real decision has already been made for you. Do you want to do this now or later? Sounds like a choice, but the question of whether you want to do it at all has been removed. This is called the illusion of choice. It works because your mind focuses on the options presented, not the structure behind them. And once you see it, you can step back and ask a different question, one that wasn't offered to you. That's how you regain control. Not by rejecting every option, but by recognizing when the frame itself is guiding your response. Underneath all of this, there's a deeper pattern that quietly reinforces everything you already believe. Once an idea settles in your mind, you start noticing evidence that supports it, while overlooking anything that contradicts it. This is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the strongest forces shaping how you see the world. It makes your beliefs feel solid, certain, even when they're incomplete. And once you're aware of it, you begin to question not just what you think, but why you think it. You start to notice what you're paying attention to, and what you're ignoring. That awareness creates space to see things more clearly, more fully, more honestly. And as all of these patterns come together, something shifts inside you. Conversations don't feel the same anymore. Not because they've changed, but because you have. You notice the small things, the pauses, the patterns, the subtle ways information moves between people. You don't react as quickly, you don't feel the need to fill every silence, and you don't give away more than you intend. And if this is the kind of awareness you want more of, the kind that helps you move through conversations with clarity and control, then stay with this, because the more you see, the more you understand, and the more you understand, the more intentional your life becomes.